If you had seen me that night, you would not have thought I was the kind of woman a man like him would ever notice. I smelled like fried onions, my hands were cracked from soap, and all I wanted was to pay my father's debt before it killed him. The restaurant was almost empty, just the hum of the old fridge and the soft buzzing of the neon sign outside. I wiped the last table slowly, dragging the cloth over a ring of dried coffee, stalling because I hated going back to our tiny apartment and seeing my father stare at the wall like a ghost. The tips from the day were folded in my apron pocket, warm from my body. I had already counted them 3 times, still not enough, never enough. When the door opened, I didn't look up right away. I thought it was one more late customer, some truck driver wanting coffee, but the air changed. It went heavier, quieter, like even the fridge was holding its breath. I felt it before I heard the slow, measured footsteps and the click of expensive shoes on the greasy floor. "Estamos cerrando," I said out of habit, then corrected myself. "We are closing. Sorry, come back, Tom." My voice cut off when I saw them. 3 men stood in the doorway, the city's yellow streetlight behind them. 2 of them were big in a way that didn't come from the gym, but from years of carrying things no one should have to carry. The third man was different. Tall, suit too perfect for this part of town, dark hair combed back, not a wrinkle on his white shirt. He looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine, not in my cheap family restaurant. Only his eyes gave him away, calm, observing. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Elena Alvarez?" he asked like he was confirming a business appointment. My heart jumped into my throat. He knew my name. That meant only one thing. I dropped the cloth without realizing. "My father isn't here," I said too fast. He went to buy cigarettes." One of the big men laughed, low and cruel. "Your father always goes somewhere when it's time to pay." The man in the suit didn't laugh. He walked further in, fingers sliding once over the scratched counter like he was checking for dust. There was no arrogance in the movement, only control, like this was his place now, not mine. "You know who I am, Elena?" he asked. I had never met him, but I had heard his name whispered over years of late-night arguments, slammed doors, and my father's shaking hands. Rafael Cortez. In our neighborhood, people didn't say Mafia. They just said his people and lowered their eyes. I swallowed. "You're the man my father owes." Something like amusement flickered in his eyes, quick and sharp. "Your father owes my organization," he corrected softly. "But tonight I am the one standing in front of you, so yes, in a way." The room felt too small. Suddenly I saw everything through his eyes. The greasy plates stacked by the sink, the old fan moving dirty air around, the tired girl in a faded uniform trying to stand straight even though her knees wanted to give out. I hated that he saw my life like this. I hated that he had the power to decide if it continued. "Please," I said, because pride was a luxury hunger had already taken from me. "I'm paying, I work double shifts, I send what I can, I just need more time." Rafael's gaze rested on my apron pocket, like he could see the small roll of notes there. He didn't reach for it. Instead, he turned his head a little, and the man on his right stepped forward, pulling a folded paper from his jacket. "Your father signed this," the man said, laying the paper on the counter. "A contract, black ink, red stamp, numbers that made my stomach twist. The time is already over." The door to the back hallway creaked, and my father appeared, as if he'd been dragged out by the sound of our voices. His shoulders were smaller than I remembered, his hair more grey than black. For a second I saw him how Rafael must see him. Weak, used up, another man who couldn't pay what he took. "No," my father whispered, staring at Rafael. No, I told you I'd get it, I just need." Rafael lifted one hand and the room went silent. His men didn't have to speak to make the threat clear. It lived in their bodies, in the way one of them shifted his jacket, revealing the metal of a gun for just a moment. I stepped in front of my father before I even thought about it. My heart was hammering so loud I thought they could hear it, but my voice came out steady. "Don't touch him, take me instead." My father grabbed my arm. "Elena, stop." I pulled away. "You said if we didn't pay, you'd take something, right?" I looked straight at Rafael, forcing myself not to look away. His eyes were darker up close, almost black. "Take my work, take my time. I'll pay every day, every night if I have to, but you will not break his hands, you will not hurt him." The big man on the right smirked. "She has a mouth," he said. Rafael still didn't smile. He just watched me like he was searching for something in my face. There was a small scar on his chin, a line of pale skin that broke the perfection. It made him look more real, more dangerous, and somehow more human. "You stand in front of him like you can stop a bullet," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because he's my father," I answered. I didn't say he had failed me. I didn't say I was angry at him. I didn't say that love and disappointment had been fighting inside me for years. None of that mattered in that moment, because I'm all he has. Something changed in Rafael's expression. It was tiny, a tightening of his jaw, a small shadow passing over his eyes, gone as fast as it came. But I saw it, regret, maybe even pain. For a heartbeat, I wondered who had ever stood in front of him like that. He took the contract from the counter, folded it slowly and slid it back into his jacket. My father let out a shaky breath, thinking that meant it was over. I knew better. Your father doesn't know how to stop taking what isn't his, Rafael said. His voice was still calm, but now there was steel under it. Next time it will not be a visit to his pretty little restaurant. Next time it will be a visit to the hospital, or worse. I felt my throat close. So let there be no next time, I said. Give me a number, a plan, I'll pay you peso by peso if I have to, put the debt in my name. My father began to cry, whispering my name, telling me no. Rafael ignored him. He looked only at me, like the rest of the room had disappeared. You think you can carry a debt that broke a grown man? He asked. I don't think, I said. I know because I don't have a choice. We stared at each other. The room smelled of old oil and coffee. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, lost in the city night. One of his men shifted, impatient. Finally, Rafael spoke. You're brave, he said, or stupid, sometimes they look the same. He walked around the counter, close enough that I had to tilt my head up. I felt his presence like heat, like a threat and a shield at the same time. He reached out and very gently took my chin between his fingers. No force, just enough to make me meet his eyes. You just saved your father's life, he said. I wanted to pull away, but something in his gaze held me still. There was no victory there, no delight in my fear. Only a tired kind of acceptance, like he had seen this scene 100 times and hated it every single time. How, I whispered, what do you want from me? He let go of my chin, and for a second I thought I saw the man he might have been if he wore a different suit, walked different streets. Then it was gone. Pack a bag, he said, stepping back, small enough for a few weeks. My father's voice broke. Please, senor, she's a good girl. Rafael cut him off with a single look. Tomorrow, 8 in the morning, a car will be outside your building, he continued, speaking only to me now. You will come with us. You will work until every cent is paid, and your father will never gamble again. If he does, he will not get a second daughter to stand in front of him. What kind of work? I asked. My fingers were cold even though sweat was running down my back. Rafael's eyes moved slowly over the empty tables, the faded posters on the walls, the cheap light bulbs. Something more fitting for the size of the debt, he said. You'll find out. It was not an answer, and he knew it. Fear crawled up my spine, but under it something else was rising too. A stubborn, desperate courage I had never needed so badly in my life. One of his men opened the door for him. Before stepping out, Rafael paused and looked back at me one last time. Elena, he said, tasting my name like it meant something. You were never meant to stay in this place forever. Remember that when you start to hate me. I didn't know what to say to that. My father was on his knees now, begging, reaching for the edge of Rafael's jacket. Rafael stepped aside before he could touch him, not harshly, just refusing. As they walked out, the cold night air rushed in. I watched Rafael's silhouette in the doorway, sharp and powerful against the soft blur of the streetlights. He reached into his pocket for something small and metallic, turned it once between his fingers, like he was weighing a decision, then slipped it back out of sight. Cancel tomorrow's dinner with Valeria, he told his right-hand man loud enough that I could hear. Tell her plans have changed. I might have found someone better. The door closed, the bell above it chimed, and the sound cut through me like a blade. I stood frozen in the empty restaurant, the word better echoing in my head, not sure if I had just saved my father. Or if I had just stepped into a life I would never be able to walk away from. The car engine had been idling under our window so long that the glass vibrated with it. I folded the same blue shirt for the 3rd time, my fingers moving on their own while my mind refused to accept what my body was doing. "So easy to do?" my father asked from the doorway, his voice rough from a night without sleep. "Only one bag." I didn't look at him. He said a few weeks. I answered, forcing my hands to stay steady. "I'm not moving there, Papa, I'm just working." The lie tasted like metal on my tongue. We both heard it. We both pretended we didn't. Our whole apartment fit into that small, suffocating silence. The crooked picture of my mother on the wall, The plant on the windowsill that kept dying and coming back. The smell of coffee we couldn't afford but still made every morning, like a ritual against despair. "You don't know men like him," my father whispered, coming closer. His hands hovered over my shoulders, afraid to touch, like he had lost the right years ago. "They don't give back what they take." I zipped the bag. "You gave him our lives a long time ago," I said before I could stop myself. The words hit him harder than any slap. He flinched, looked down, his shoulders folding inward. Immediately, guilt burned hot in my chest, but I didn't take it back. I was too tired of being the one who patched everything. He swallowed. I talked to a friend last night," he offered suddenly, as if that could fix anything. "He says Rafael wasn't always like this, that once years ago he helped a boy who stole from him, paid his mother's rent instead of." "Papa," I faced him now, cutting him off gently. His eyes were red, his hair sticking up. He looked older than his age, like life had been eating him from the inside. "I don't need stories about his heart, I need him not to kill you." We stared at each other, everything we had never said hanging between us like smoke. I wanted to tell him I was scared. I wanted to ask him why I had to be the one to clean his mess. Instead, I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. For a moment he stood stiff, then he clung to me, his breath shaking against my hair. "Perdoname Hija," he whispered. "Forgive me if I could take your place." "You had your chance," I murmured into his shirt. It came out sharper than I meant. I pulled back and forced a small smile. "Now let me fix it my way." A horn honked once, short and polite, from the street below. My time was up. The climb down the narrow staircase felt like walking through syrup. Doors cracked open as I passed, neighbors pretending to be interested in their own shoes, their own brooms. Everyone had seen the car pull up. Everyone knew that kind of black sedan didn't belong to our building. One of Rafael's men, the one who had laughed last night, stood by the rear door. In daylight he looked less like a monster and more like a tired man in an expensive jacket. "Morning, Elena," he said. "I'm Tomas, get in." No threat, no kindness, just a command dressed as an invitation. I slid into the back seat, my bag on my lap. The leather was cold against my bare arms. Tomas closed the door with quiet care, then got in the front. As we pulled away, I saw my father in the doorway of the building, one hand pressed to the frame like he needed it to hold himself up. He didn't wave, neither did I. It felt too much like goodbye. The city rolled by in colors I had never really seen before, even though I had lived in it all my life. Street vendors setting up their stalls, children in uniforms walking to school, women laughing over plastic cups of coffee. They all looked so normal, like my world hadn't ended a few hours ago. I pressed my forehead to the glass. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You don't need the address," Tomas replied, eyes on the road. "You won't be driving yourself there anytime soon." "Is it far?" He considered. "Far enough that your father won't just drop by when he feels like it. Close enough that if you run, we'll still find you before you remember which bus to take." It was said almost gently, like he was giving me directions to a park. We drove past neighborhoods I only knew from television. The buildings grew taller, cleaner. The air felt different, lighter somehow, even as my chest grew heavier. Finally, we turned onto a private road lined with trees so perfectly trimmed they looked fake. The house was not a house, it was an estate. High stone walls, cameras on every corner, heavy iron gates that opened without sound. Inside, everything was too quiet. A long driveway led to a modern villa with huge glass windows and white walls that probably cost more than my whole street. I had expected darkness. Instead, there was too much light. Tomas parked in front of the entrance. Another man, older, opened my door. He had kind eyes that didn't match the gun under his jacket. "Señorita," he said, offering a hand to help me out. "I am Mateo. Come, the boss is waiting." The boss, two words that suddenly made last night feel very far away. Mateo led me inside. The floors were polished stone, reflecting the ceiling lights like water. Expensive art covered the walls, but none of it was beautiful, only impressive. The air smelled of lemon and something sharp I couldn't name. A woman in her 50s appeared at the end of the hall, wiping her hands on a cloth. Her grey hair was tied back, her eyes quick and assessing. "This is Doña Marta," Mateo said. "She runs the house. If you need something, you ask her. If she tells you to do something, you do it." Doña Marta nodded at me, not unkindly but not warmly either. "You're thinner than I expected," she commented. "Eat here, don't be stupid and faint where the men can see you. Come." She took my bag without asking and disappeared down a corridor. Matteo gestured toward a large wooden door. "He's inside," he said. "Try not to lie, he hates that." "Why would I lie?" I asked. Matteo gave a sad little smile, "Because everyone does eventually." I pushed the door open. Rafael's office was big enough to fit my entire restaurant. One wall was all glass, showing a wide view of the city below, its chaos reduced to tiny, glittering lights. Behind a massive dark desk, Rafael sat in a leather chair reading a file. In daylight he looked different, less like a shadow, more like a man. The suit was still perfect, the hair still controlled, but I could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the lines at the corners of his eyes. He hadn't slept much either. He didn't stand when I entered. He just lifted his gaze to me, and the room lost every detail except his eyes. "You came," he said. "You didn't give me a choice," I answered. A corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "People always have choices, they just don't like the price of the other ones." He closed the file and gestured to the chair in front of his desk. I sat, back straight, hands on my knees like I was at some job interview from hell. "This is how it will work," Rafael said. His voice was calm, almost bored, like we were discussing a delivery schedule. "You will work for me until the debt is gone. You will live here. You will not leave this property without my permission or my men. You will not speak to police, journalists, or anyone who smells like a problem. You will answer my questions honestly. If you lie to me once, I will know, and your father will pay for it." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "What exactly is my job?" I asked. He watched me for a second, then opened a drawer and took out a stack of papers, dropping them in front of me. Receipts, invoices, handwritten notes, all messy, all with numbers. "You ran your father's restaurant books, didn't you?" he asked. I frowned. "How do you know that?" "I know everything I lend money to," he said simply. "Your father is sloppy, but the numbers at the end of every week, every month, those were clean, organized, someone fixed them. That someone was you." Heat crept up my neck. There was something deeply unsettling about a stranger knowing this small, invisible thing about my life. "You will keep my books," he continued. "Not all of them," he added, almost amused by my expression. "Just the cleaner sides, the hotels, the restaurants, the bars. You will make sure nobody steals from me. You will count what comes in and what goes out." "And the dirty side?" I asked before I could stop myself. His eyes darkened. "You will see enough of that whether I want you to or not." He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a problem he hadn't fully solved yet. "I chose this for you because you're good with numbers," he said, "and because people who have known hunger tend to respect every coin. The rich are careless, they steal without even realizing. You will not." It was almost a compliment, but it felt like a cage. "What about my father?" I forced myself to ask. "Is someone watching him?" "Yes," Rafael didn't hesitate. "There will be men on his street. He will not be allowed into any casino, any illegal table, any backroom where cards are played. If he tries, they will stop him. If he insists," he paused, "they will remind him of the cost." "Will you hurt him?" My voice came out smaller than I liked. "I will hurt him only if you give me a reason to," Rafael said. "Do your job," he breathes. "It's simple." Simple, like math, like breaking someone's life into numbers and consequences. He tapped the stack of papers in front of me. "You have until tonight to tell me where the money is leaking from this list," he said. "If you find it, you sleep in a bed. If you don't, you sleep in the corridor outside this office until you learn to be faster." The humiliation lit a small fire in my chest. "Fine," I said, "give me a pen." His eyes held mine for a moment, measuring, testing. Then he signaled to someone behind me I hadn't even noticed was there. A pen appeared on the desk. Hours blurred. I forgot the city outside, forgot my father, forgot my own hunger. There were numbers, patterns, mismatched dates, a bar that bought too much of everything, a hotel that paid suppliers twice in the same week, tiny disappearances that added up to something bigger. By the time I found the hole, my shoulders ached and my eyes burned. I circled the number on the page and pushed it toward Rafael, who had been working on something else, occasionally glancing at me like a teacher with a new student. "This," I said, my voice was hoarse. "Here, they're using fake invoices to move money out." He took the paper, reading the messy notes. Then, without a word, he picked up his phone. "Bring Nico," he said. The air in the room changed. Two men walked in a few minutes later, dragging a third between them. Nico was maybe 30, with a cheap gold chain around his neck and a bruise forming on his cheek. His shirt was stained, his eyes wild. "Boss, please," he started as soon as he saw Rafael. "It's a mistake. I didn't touch your money, I swear." Rafael didn't raise his voice. "You stole from me," he said. "Not enough to make me poor, enough to make me bored." His gaze flicked to me. "Elena found you in half a day with a pen and a headache. You really thought I would." Nico followed his line of sight and saw me for the first time. Confusion crossed his face, then something like anger. "Who is she?" he spat. "Some waitress, this isn't her business." "It is now," Rafael said softly. He stood slow and precise. The room seemed to shrink with every step he took. He opened another drawer and took out a gun. I had never seen one so close. It was smaller than I expected, heavier in his hand than it looked. He checked it like a man checking his watch, calm and practiced. Fear crawled up my throat. "Rafael," I said before I could think. "Please, maybe he." He turned his head slightly in my direction. "Do not say maybe," he said. There was no anger in his tone, only warning. "He stole, he lied, in my world that has a cost." Nico fell to his knees, hands clasped, voice cracking. "Boss, for my kids, please, give me one more chance. I'll pay it back. I'll work for free." "You already worked for free," Rafael cut in. He stepped closer, the gun hanging at his side. "Every peso you took is a peso that should have gone to men who died for me, to families I feed so they never have to do what I did. When you steal from me, you steal 10 times from them." He lifted the gun, pointed it at Nico's leg. "Look away, Elena," he said quietly. "This is not for you." My body wanted to obey, my stomach flipped. My hands shook where they gripped the arms of the chair, but something in me refused to give him that power, to make me another person who pretended not to see. "No," I whispered. "If he dies because of my numbers, I'm not going to close my eyes." Rafael's jaw tightened. For the first time I saw a crack in his calm, a flash of something almost like respect, anger, fear. "People who look at this don't stay the same," he warned. "You still have a chance to keep a piece of yourself, take it." "I already sold my soul when I got in your car," I said. "Do what you're going to do." The room went silent. Mateo shifted by the door, eyes on me like he'd never seen anyone so stupid in his life. Rafael's gaze locked on mine over the barrel of the gun. His hand, steady a moment ago, trembled just once. "Last chance, Elena," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. "Turn around." I didn't move. The sound of my own heartbeat roared in my ears as his finger curled around the trigger. The gunshot cracked the air open like lightning. I flinched, my hands flying to my ears. Nico screamed, high and broken. For a second I thought I saw red on the floor, and then I realized it was only the reflection of the sunset on the polished stone. Rafael had shot the wall, 2 inches from Nico's head. Concrete dust drifted down in a slow, grey curtain. Nico's breath came in ragged gasps. A dark patch spread across his pants, not blood, just humiliation. Rafael lowered the gun, his face locked in a cold mask I no longer believed. "You have until midnight to bring back every cent," he said to Nico, voice flat. "With interest, Mateo will give you the number, if you run." "I won't, boss, I swear." "If you run," Rafael repeated, cutting him off, "I will not waste another bullet on you. I will give your name to people who enjoy what I don't." There was no need to describe who those people were. Nico nodded so fast his neck looked like it would snap, mumbling gratitude and prayer in the same breath. "Get him out," Rafael ordered. When they dragged Nico away, his eyes brushed over me, full of a hatred I understood too well. In his mind, I had pulled the trigger. The door closed, silence rushed back into the room, loud and heavy. I realized I was shaking. "You didn't have to do that," I managed, my voice barely there. "You could have, you would have killed him." Rafael put the gun back in the drawer with an almost tender care, as if it was something fragile. He didn't look at me when he answered. "I told you," he said, "you wouldn't walk out of here the same." "But you didn't kill him," I pushed, needing something to hold on to, "because I was here." Now he looked at me. The softness I'd almost seen the night before was gone, buried. In its place was something harder. "Don't flatter yourself," he said calmly. "I don't kill men who can still make themselves useful, and I don't like getting blood on my office floor." The words should have pushed me away. They almost did. but I remembered the small shake in his hand, the way his eyes had flicked from my face to Nico's kids no one had even seen, weighing those invisible lives in some private scale. "You're lying," I said quietly. His jaw tightened. "Careful, Elena. You could have hit his leg, his arm, you missed on purpose." I swallowed, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Whatever else you are, you don't like this part, you just know how to do it." For a brief, unguarded moment, his eyes closed. The man behind the boss flickered into view, tired, disgusted, trapped in his own design. "Go with Marta," he said finally, opening his eyes again. The wall was back up, the boss was back. "She'll show you your room, come back tomorrow at 7, we start early." "That's it," I stared at him. "You point a gun at a man's head, almost shoot him, scare me half to death, and then tell me to go to bed." "What did you want?" he asked, almost curious. "An apology, a welcome gift. This is not one of your telenovelas, Elena." Pain and anger rose in my throat. "You think I enjoy this?" I snapped. "You think I wanted any of this?" "No," he said softly. "That's exactly why you're here." We held each other's gaze for a long second. There was too much in it, hate, fear, something else I couldn't name. Then he looked away, dismissing me, and I realized something important. Whatever kindness Rafael had was not for me. It was a secret he kept even from himself. Days bled into weeks in that house. Mornings began before the sun, with strong coffee in the kitchen while Marta gave orders like a general. Men came and went in shifts, their conversations full of names I wasn't supposed to hear, deals I wasn't supposed to understand. I learned to recognize the difference between the sound of a car arriving for business and a car arriving for trouble. My world shrank to numbers. Invoices, balance sheets, supplier lists. I discovered ghosts in the lines, fake employees, shell companies, back doors where money slipped out and never returned. Every time I found one, Rafael's mouth would curve, not quite into a smile, but close. "You have a good eye," he told me once, not looking up from the file. "Better than some of the men I pay 10 times more." "That's because their job is to steal," I said before I could stop myself. "Mine is to survive." His eyes lifted, pinning me in place. For a moment I thought I'd gone too far, then he nodded just once. "Exactly." In the afternoons, Matteo taught me things I'd never imagined needing to know. How to tell if someone was following you. How to stop a man from grabbing you on the street. How to tell from the way a person lit a cigarette whether they had ever held a gun. "Why are you teaching me this?" I asked one day, breathless, after he pulled me out of a clumsy attempt to twist his arm. "Because the boss told me to," he said simply. "And because you already put yourself between danger and someone you love. People like that either die young or learn fast." At night, the house changed. Voices got lower, laughter got sharper. Men I'd never seen during the day appeared in the hallways, their suits darker, their eyes colder. Once, passing Rafael's office late, I heard him shouting for the first time, words I couldn't make out but pain I could almost feel through the door. I should have walked away. I should have gone back to my room, closed the door and put a pillow over my head. Instead, I knocked. The shouting stopped. A second later, his voice came, controlled again. "Entra." He was standing by the window, phone still in his hand, the city lights turning his white shirt pale blue. His tie was loose, his hair slightly out of place. He looked younger like that and somehow more dangerous. "What is it?" he asked. For a second, I forgot why I had come. You were loud." His brow lifted. "You came to complain about the noise." I almost laughed. "No, I came because I heard how you sounded. And I thought if you sounded like that on the phone, then whoever was on the other side sounded worse." For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely surprised. "Do you always walk toward the fire?" he asked quietly. "Most people run." "I grew up in a kitchen," I said. "We don't run from heat." A small, reluctant smile touched his lips. It changed his whole face. For a moment he looked almost approachable. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair. I did. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. The city glowed behind him like another universe. "That was my uncle," he said after a moment. "He thinks I am too soft." I thought about the bullet hole in his wall, about Nico's shaking body. "You don't seem soft," I replied. "That's the problem." His eyes went distant for a moment, as if he was seeing another boy in another room, much smaller and much weaker. "He was the one who showed me this world, taught me how to survive it. To him, kindness is a disease. It spreads, makes men lazy, makes them vulnerable. And you, I asked, what do you think? His gaze snapped back to mine. I think he's the reason you stood in front of your father instead of behind him, he said. Men like him force women like you to become shields. The truth of it hit me so hard my breath caught. You're not like him, I said quietly. You don't know me. Then why didn't you kill Nico? I held his gaze. Why am I sitting in a room with you and not on the street, working 3 jobs to pay off a debt you could have erased with one signature? He considered, then sighed, as if the answer cost him something. Because somebody once chose not to kill me, he said, and I still wake up wondering why. He didn't explain, I didn't push, but in that moment, sitting in his office with the city lights on his shoulders like some strange crown, I saw the boy his uncle had tried to erase. The one who had learned power not because he wanted it, but because without it he would have died. Before I could say anything else, a knock interrupted us. The door opened without waiting for an answer. A woman glided in on high heels that clicked softly against the floor. Her dress cost more than my monthly rent. Diamonds sparkled at her ears, at her throat. Her perfume arrived before she did, expensive and sharp. Rafa, she said, using the nickname like she owned it. Her gaze slid over me with quick, practiced judgment. You're working late, again. Rafael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Valeria, he said, I wasn't expecting you. Yes, I noticed. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She touched his shoulder in a way that was more possession than affection, then turned fully to me. And who is this? Elena, Rafael answered before I could. She works for me. Valeria's eyes traveled from my plain shirt to my tired face, then to the stack of files on the desk. Doing what? She asked like it mattered. Counting what people like your father leave on my table, he said smoothly. Her laugh was a little too loud. Always so dramatic, she said, but I saw the flash of irritation in her eyes. Well, whatever she does, I'm sure a computer could do it cheaper. The words strung more than they should have. I saw Rafael's expression harden. Elena is not a machine, he said evenly, and she is not your concern. For a second, our eyes met. There was something like an apology in his, or maybe I only wanted to see it. Valeria shrugged. As long as she doesn't get in the way of the wedding, she said, examining her nails. Papa is asking when you're going to make it official. There's a gala next month, perfect opportunity, no. My heart did a small, stupid, inexplicable thing in my chest. Next month, Rafael repeated. Yes, Valeria leaned in, her lips a breath from his ear. Wear something nice, and try not to bring work. She threw me one last dismissive look, and swept out as quickly as she had entered, trailing perfume and tension behind her. We were alone again. The silence felt heavier this time. A wedding, I said, trying to sound neutral. Politics, Rafael corrected. His face had closed back up like a door shutting. Not everything that looks like love is love. And not everything that looks like power is power, I said before I could stop myself. He studied me, something unreadable in his eyes. Be ready next month, he said at last. You'll be there. I want you to see how pretty hell can look when it puts on a suit. The gala did not look like hell. It looked like a dream I didn't belong in. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they made my neck hurt. Men in tailored suits laughed with their mouths and not their eyes. Women in sparkling dresses moved like they were floating, their hair shining under the lights. I stood near the back of the ballroom, in a simple black dress Marta had dug out of some forgotten closet. It fit almost perfectly, which scared me a little, like the house had been waiting for someone my size. Matteo stood beside me scanning the crowd. Smile, he muttered. You look like you're planning a robbery. I am planning not to trip, I whispered back. Is that allowed? He almost smiled. Relax, nobody's looking at you. He was wrong. Valeria moved through the room like a star, people orbiting her. Her dress was pale gold, her lips red, her laugh carefully measured. Her father, a senator with perfect hair and a shark smile, stood at her side, shaking hands, collecting favors disguised as compliments. And then there was Rafael. In a black suit and tie, he looked even more distant from my world, but his eyes were the same, sharp, calculating, tired. When he shook hands, men held on longer than necessary, hoping some of his power would rub off on their fingers. At one point, his gaze swept the room and caught mine. For a second, everything else blurred. His eyes moved over my dress, my face, lingering just long enough to make me swallow. He looked away first. The boss hates these things, Matteo said quietly. Too many lies in one room, even for him. Then why is he here? Because power likes to drink champagne, Matteo said, and men like him can't afford not to be where power is poured. Music started, soft and elegant. Waiters wove through the crowd with trays of wine and champagne. I watched one of them out of the corner of my eye. His tray shook just enough to make the glasses clink together. Something in me tightened. He was sweating too much for an air-conditioned room. His eyes kept flicking not to the bar or the door, but to Rafael. I moved before I knew I was moving. Leaving Matteo's side, I walked faster, using the crowd as cover. My heart pounded. Maybe I was wrong, maybe he was just nervous, maybe. As I passed close behind the waiter, I saw it, the black handle of a knife tucked clumsily into the back of his pants, half hidden by the white apron. My body acted on some instinct I didn't know I had. I bumped hard into his side, grabbing his arm like I was losing my balance. "Pardon," I gasped, loud enough for people to turn. The tray tilted. Champagne flew into the air, sparkling arcs of gold. The waiter jerked back, his hand flying not to the tray but toward the knife. "Rafa," I shouted. Everything happened at once. The waiter lunged forward, arm moving in a quick, ugly motion. Rafael turned, his hand already going inside his jacket. Someone screamed, a glass shattered. I grabbed the waiter's wrist, my fingers closing around bone and skin. The knife still sliced, catching my arm, hot pain flashing white. Rafael's gun appeared like magic, aimed and steady. He didn't hesitate, 2 shots clean and controlled. The waiter dropped, the knife clattering to the floor. For a moment all I could hear was ringing. Then the room exploded into noise, shouts, cries, orders barked into earpieces. Men rushed forward. Women pressed hands to their mouths, their eyes wide. Blood bloomed on the marble next to my bare feet. "Elena," someone pulled me back, my vision blurred. I looked down and saw red on my skin. It took a second to realize it was mine. A line of fire ran from my wrist to my elbow where the knife had kissed me. Rafael was suddenly in front of me, one hand on my shoulder, the other taking my injured arm with surprising gentleness. "Let me see," he said, voice low, controlled only by force. His fingers were warm, his touch careful as he turned my arm, examining the cut. "It's shallow," he exhaled, more to himself than to me. "You'll live." "Sorry," I whispered, dizzy. "I didn't mean to make a scene." Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, fear, relief. "You just stopped me from getting a knife in my ribs," he said. "You can make all the scenes you want." Valeria was there now, her face pale with a rage she tried to hide behind concern. "Rafa, what is going on? They told me someone tried to." Her eyes fell on my arm, on his hand holding me, on my bare feet splashed with red. "Oh, of course." "Valeria, not now," he said sharply. Her mouth tightened. "Not now," she repeated. "When then? When your little assistant gets you killed? Or when the press finds out the great Rafael Cortez almost died because he was too busy playing hero to his staff?" The word staff dripped from her tongue like something dirty. Around us people were watching, important people, some with pity, some with disgust, all with hungry curiosity. The senator approached, his face carefully set in concern, his eyes calculating. "Rafael," he said, "are you all right? We can't let this little incident overshadow our announcement." Announcement, the word hit like ice water. A doctor checked my arm with quick, efficient hands, wrapping a bandage around it. I barely felt it. My gaze stayed on Rafael. He looked around the room, at the police officers he paid to look the other way, at the businessmen who owed him favors, at the senator who wanted his influence, at Valeria with her perfect anger. And then his eyes landed on me. In that second I understood something. In his world every move had 2 meanings, one for the heart, one for the game. Sometimes they pulled in the same direction, sometimes they didn't. He straightened, letting go of my arm slowly, his fingers dragging along my skin for one brief, electric moment. Then he turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called, his voice cutting through the murmur like a knife. The music stopped, heads turned, cameras lifted. "I apologize for the interruption. Some people don't understand that when you come into my house with bad intentions, you leave on the floor." Polite, nervous laughter. the kind rich people did when they knew they should be scared. Rafael reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. My stomach dropped. The senator smiled wide, placing a hand on Valeria's back, nudging her forward. Valeria lifted her chin, excitement and triumph warring in her eyes. This was the moment she'd been building herself around. But Rafael didn't look at her. His gaze found me again, steady, unreadable. There was dust on my dress, blood on my arm, my hair had fallen out of its clip. I had never felt less like I belonged in a room. Rafa, Valeria hissed under her breath, reaching for his arm. He stepped away from her touch. Tonight, he said, his eyes never leaving mine, I was reminded of something important. That loyalty is not bought with money or a famous last name or a pretty dress. It's proven when the lights are bright and the knives come out. He started walking. Not toward the senator. Not toward the smiling photographers. Not toward the golden girl in the perfect gown. He was walking toward me. The crowd parted like water. Whispers rose and fell in waves around us. Mateo's hand tightened on my elbow, not to hold me back, but because even he didn't know what his boss was about to do. Rafael stopped in front of me, so close I could see the tiny scar on his chin, the one that made him look almost vulnerable. Rafael, I whispered, my voice shaking, what are you doing? Correcting a mistake, he said. He opened the box. Inside, a ring caught the light, simple but undeniably expensive. A circle of gold with a single diamond that flashed like a promise and a warning at the same time. Gasps rippled through the room. Valeria's hand flew to her mouth. The senator's face turned the color of ash. Rafael took the ring out with steady fingers. Give me your hand, Elena, he said softly in front of everyone. My mind went blank. This ring was not meant for me. This life was not meant for me. And yet here I was, standing barefoot in borrowed silk, my blood on his skin, while the most feared man in the room waited for my answer with a small piece of eternity between his fingers.